Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Halfwatt podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
So, well, as having spent this much time in the trades, are you seeing more women move through the trades? Have you? Is it? Your perspective. What's your perspective on women in the trade?
I am actually very surprised. Now, I don't get out much because it's not like you're working for a contractor where you're all over the place. Maybe there's multiple trades on a job site, but we do hire. We've built many, many new buildings, and we hire a number of contractors. The thing that amazes me is I get why a lot of women won't go into regular electrical. I found it very interesting and I really liked it, but lifting a 100-pound panel when you're 5'2" it's not practical. And so
I can see that.
There's just physical things. It was the same problem in the nuclear industry. You're dealing with, aught cable and giant connections, and it tears your hands apart over time. So, but the thing I've never really understood is there's very few women that go into limited energy. Yeah. Now I see on the apprentice list that there's women going into data, into B, but fire is a really, really good job because you can kind of focus on programming or design. You can still string wire and mount equipment. There's a lot of flexibility, but for the most part, the equipment's not brutally heavy.
Right. That's a good point. I never thought about that.
And it's just because for me, I really liked power distribution. I learned how to do all the calculations for arc flash and all that. But I realized that just from a practical point of view, I'm not that big. And if you wear out, even the guys wear out over time, but I could see where there's some reluctance there. And I've only honestly met a handful of women electricians in Oregon. The union has some more so.
There's not as many as I thought there would be either.
No.
And I've instructed now for 9 or 10 years. So I've seen, each class goes through, they're going to go through my class usually. And so I see the percentage of women, it's very low. It's much lower than I would like it to be.
Have you seen it increase?
I have seen it increase.
Well, that's encouraging.
But I have, in this particular lot of students, I have one female student right now. One.
Now, is that for LEA, LEB, or
LEA.
just all of them? Yeah. It's
and this is an early class, but still, this is usually the second class people go through. And yeah, she's bright. She's really good. She's also from California, and she's a single mom with a couple of kids and working her way through it. I kind of gave her a nickel tour of our facility, but I couldn't spend nearly as much time as I wanted to. And then the next day, I was planning on doing what we call a download. I have a simplex system, so I have to download my nodes, and then everything went sideways on us, and I was unable to do that. And she happened to be up at the hospital. She's got a medical thing going on with a family member. So it's I really wanted to be able to do some kind of field instructing, and it's just everything. Sometimes you get a perfect storm of stuff. Like George Fox, when you're the one person and you have all these different buildings, I have a crew of folks that I work with.
Okay.
But there's really only one other troubleshooter technician so there's really two of us that maintain all the fire alarm stuff, and then there's several people to maintain to do the inspection and test on it, but they're not maintenance folks. Like I can't send them out to handle certain aspects of it, and this is not their job.
No, not really.
And so there's it boils down to having a lot of square footage and a lot of devices and just a few people, and so we have to maximize our time. And if you're programming, and we don't install, we may install small onesie twosies, but we are either programming or troubleshooting or correcting or moving forward, because it's a hospital. You've got this constant. You must be compliant.
Right.
Like you cannot not be compliant. That's just not happening.
Can't happen.
And I've worked there twice. So when I was there earlier, I saw, when I walked into it, the place was a complete shambles. It was a complete mess. And now it's dialed in. We know what we're doing. You still have a lot of work, but I don't mind walking into a situation where I know I have a lot of things to do because I like to keep myself busy.
Keep busy.
But sometimes you get to, like tonight. It's my Friday night because I work 4/10s, and I guess get done. I'm like, what the hell did I do this week?
Yeah, it goes
did
by.
I really get anything done?
I know, a list. Yeah, I mean, I make huge lists, and I look back at them. I don't even remember half the time.
Me
wow,
either.
I got that much done. Wow.
When I was an ops manager at Performance, I had a windowless office that the CEO used to have, and I took it over, and it was a blessing to be able to shut the door. I had 4 whiteboards, big whiteboards,
Okay.
and I would write on them all. It was like a beautiful mind kind of thing.
Yeah.
People would come in and they go, "Oh my God, what's wrong with this place?" I'm like, "That's my memory. Don't erase it." Then there'd be times when I've erased all the boards.
Start over.
And people would come in and go, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "It's just the way it works."
Yeah.
And now it's sticky notes on my desk. There's a million sticky notes
everywhere.
And there's electronic ways to do that, but honestly,
I know. I see that. There's people. I finally went to spreadsheets. I'm a compulsive spreadsheet maker. And it's becoming a mental disorder.
It is.
And
I get the same thing. I don't know where to keep stuff anymore.
Like, what's with you? And all the color coding, that's my brain.
Yeah.
But really, there's days when the brain is really a pound of hamburger that you just threw on the floor. Really hard.
It even has the sound of it. I get it.
I think that's another thing why certain people do better in this trade than others. It's just been that way ever since I've been in it, it's always a multitude of issues, especially if you don't have a huge staff and everybody specializes.
And you're the jack of all trades.
You're it. And it might be...
Or the Jacqueline of all trades.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It might be at 2 a.m. And that's, I generally take being on call just because I can go back to sleep. It doesn't bother me. Whereas some people just really can't do it. They don't do well. But it's been that way ever since, 30 years ago with this. And there's been times when I've had to get dressed and go down there. We live, 15 miles away, I guess. Yeah. And that's fine, but I don't mind having a lot of things to do. What I don't like is when you go in and you're feeling out of control. Like, are you really going to pull it together? Are you going to pull it back into compliance? Or is there something so wrong or something you can't find in the time frame? Then that's where the pressure comes in.
That's where the pressure comes in.
Yeah. And for the most part, we've been able to deal with that. But I've had those. Or now what's happening with old systems is we had an apartment house go down this a couple weeks ago. So it's Friday night. We're there till like 9. Put an older board into a silent night power panel. And
like a NAC panel? Or
yeah, it was like a NAC panel attached to
Did it have
the
the ticking? Have you had the ticking fault where your power supply starts to tick?
Yeah, I've had that. This particular one wasn't ticking; it was just dead. So I'm like, nah.
Might give up.
But you're not going to replace it. It's so old; they don't make it anymore. Yeah. So we have other sort of old parts, and you put that in there, and you try. And then I go, no, it's not going to work. They have to do a fire watch. Well, that freaks them out because that's extra manpower and money and wailing and crying and,
Great
whatever.
gnashing of teeth.
Yeah, exactly. So I call the director, say this is a deal. He says, okay, fine. I go home, go to bed. Well, at that point, I don't have any guilt. We did our best. Yeah. But, it's just hard to do that when you're going to say, no, hold darn, forget it. Evacuate it or put a fire watch on it. And I struggled with that early on. I don't now. I have no problem.
I could feel that because when I first got into the trade, I felt like I was letting a client down when I couldn't fix the problem, even though the problem was unfixable.
Yeah, it's not your fault.
It's not my fault.
No, you take it personally.
I had to step back and go, unfortunately, this is your equipment, and it happens to have found the
end of life.
It's end of life. I had an issue, and I talked to an IT guy the other day, and I says, I have this. I have one SureGuard receiver that receives a secondary set of signals.
Okay.
Stuff goes to the central monitoring station, fine, but I can also redirect a second set of signals up to another SureGuard receiver. And I had a problem with the port, and I don't know if it's the port on the SureGuard receiver, which was built before most of these people I'm working with were born, or if it's the computer it's talking to because it's using a version of Windows that isn't supported anymore. And to get upgrades and things done is a real challenge to do this, because the modern way that they handle cybersecurity, you have to do it the right way, or you will be exploited. It's just that simple. And so you just have to go through it. So I was having a little meltdown with this guy, and I just said, it's just like routers. They have like 2 moving parts, and that's the antennas. That's it.
That's true.
The only moving part on a router is the dang antennas. Why do these things fail after 20 million packets? What is going on with this? The guy goes, cheap chips. That's what it boils down to. And I went,
heats up, yeah.
Yeah, I just needed somebody who's really been in the industry as long as me. Go, just shut up, man. It's just the crap chips. What are you buying? What are you buying?
You're
what are you
garbage.
putting in? Yeah,
I know, it's all garbage.
Would you looking and you see, if you wanted to buy a quality product, it's going to cost you $300, $400. Where you're buying something for $68, you wonder why it fails.
Exactly, it's disposable. It's a paper cup. I know. And yeah, we really struggled with that. The school was all about saving money at first, but code's code, right?
Right. So, and compliance is compliance.
No
and life
option.
safety is life safety.
Can't only put in half the Hornstrobes, but because I was asked that at one point, and no, the option. But over the years, one thing I have been very grateful of, not being self-employed, is that we can choose whatever equipment we feel is best. We're not forced to say buy the cheaper product, because we're a private school. And I've been in public schools where every building is different. Every building is done by a different contractor, and then very rarely maintained.
Or definitely not maintained to a level. Be. Yeah.
And so I've been very grateful, because that has been one stress. And like you're saying, what's interesting is, since schools have huge IT departments, well, I was doing cameras for a while, so then you're a little more intimate with the IT situation, but you always had that technical backup, which was nice, and they would do everything for you. Of course, I probably couldn't survive in private industry because I don't know anything about it. Call IT.
Well, like in some regards, like the Portland public school system, like the people who are overseeing the fire systems at Portland Public Schools said, we will put in this brand of fire panel, and that is it.
Good for them.
And that is it.
Good
and
for
same
them.
thing with PSU. I met the guy who was running PSU, and he says, we only put in this kind. That is it. There are no deviations from that.
That's really
and
good.
So in Portland, we had to do a little bit of work for Portland Public School District when I was a contractor, and they wouldn't even let us do the programming. They said, no, you install the hardware, we handle the programming. Don't even think about touching it. And I certainly wasn't offended, because the guy just said, he goes, if I let anybody else do it, they'll screw it up. I know exactly what I want. I know exactly how I want the code to go.
Right.
And as a guy who's working in the code, when my own systems.
Right.
different.
Everybody's different.
I can look at it and I go, I'm looking at every single panel's got a little bit of different twist to it, because it's, it's not all the same.
Unique.
So when I started to standardize the pieces that can be standardized, I want this to look just like this, and this node, and this
patterns.
Node. Yes. Yeah. And that I get more job satisfaction writing a code that I know worked in every single node here, and I'm going to duplicate that here, and I'm going to get rid of all the crap I don't need.
That's
because
smart.
It doesn't need to be there.
Right. Clean it up.
Give some features to the folks who are operating the system, so that they, we've got one where when we send a signal, it pops a little notification up, and you can actually time that. So when that comes on, that signal is being sent to the central station. You can go click,
you see it,
look it out in your app, got it. There's your time frame. That's your transmission time, which
awesome.
in hospitals is a necessary thing.
Sure. Yeah.
So we built that, and they went, wow. Cool. We had no idea. I'm like, having been in that side of the business, and now I'm on this side of the business, I can dial that stuff in and make it. Make it better for you.
Yeah, well, it's fun because you feel like you're delivering a little customer service.
Because my customers are the staff,
the building occupants,
the building occupants, and the people who are testing the system, and these other folks over here. It's
some satisfaction in being able to be competent, because I know that was hard for me with all these buildings. The programs are not not necessarily consistent, especially the older ones, because you do kind of refine as you go.
You do get better as you.
I mean, they work.
There's things that get better with age. Wine, code writers.
Code writers, I know. And then there's other things. But well, I think my first experience was the McMinnville School District, and that was with D&D, and we were asked to look at it and evaluate it. Every building had a different proprietary system.
Ooh.
And, it was pyrotronics, it was, all these different ones. And the maintenance guy's like, I don't know. We just call. We have to call somebody, and we got like all these different guys that work on these different systems. And it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's because we've tried to standardize. We've tried to keep everything the same because you have an end user that has to interface and see what's going on. Hopefully it kind of looks the same, tastes the same, So we've gone for that to some extent as well. Doesn't always work, but
yeah. I to some degree I like proprietary systems in some because I work on one, but I've also liked the open source stuff. And having worked in Silent Night for years, and then moved to once I got exposed to the Potter product and realized that, wow,
it's a good product.
They've really put this together pretty well. Yeah. And I apparently engineers went, we're done. When Honeywell made some changes, they changed all the deck chairs on the Titanic, and some of them went, we're jumping now. And so Potter picked up a lot of really smart, and I'll give you an example. I had a call. And I was a manager weasel, so I didn't have to take too many service calls. Yeah. But, just like we just talked about, sometimes you got to pull wire, Holmes. So I get this call. I have to go down to Newport and look at a Potter panel. Never worked on this model of Potter in my life. It's got a dialer issue, so who knows what that is. Yeah. So I get down there. I download the program I need because it's open source. I download the program, install it. Looks like it uses Ethernet cable. Plug it in, bam, starts talking. Like within seconds, just like the manual says, the thing's talking. I'm like, okay, well that doesn't happen all that often. So let me pull down the data, look at the card. There was an extra character on the end of the dialer string for account 2. There were 2 accounts. And the second account had an extra character on it, like it was 22 instead of just 12. For the time that panel had been installed, it was a complete flub by the installer. Yeah. It had never had a problem, and then something changed. The carrier or something like that. But that extra 2 meant something different, and now it was affecting its. So it was dialing in fine on one phone line, both phone lines, but the second account was giving him grief. Okay, yeah. So I thought,
goes in digital garbage.
It can't be that simple. Backspace, save, upload to the panel, bam, thing goes green. I went, that can't be. That just can't be right. So I'm standing there looking at this thing going, I could not have possibly fixed this thing in less 15 minutes. So I think it was there for 15 or 20 minutes. It was so short a call, and I'd love to say that I had technically figured it out, but that was bat squeeze because I stumbled my way through it. So I went, hey, I got to change out some batteries here too. So she took me over and I did that. And I kind of went back and looked back at the panel and went, I think we're done here.
Oh my goodness.
She just looked at me. She's so small. I guess.
Wow.
I guess you go home now. I'm like, I guess I do. So, that's one of those calls where you just go, what the hell just happened? Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be. Right. That was exactly the way it was supposed to be. Yes, it was an error that someone made years ago, but it was no big deal. It didn't affect anything until the day it did.
And then it did.
And then we fixed it. And now it doesn't have that problem. And I'm going to go get a crab salad and go home now.
Go home. No,
Unbelievable.
In the early days of programming, I found, you know how NFPA requires you to test 25% of the equipment after you download? Well, let's face it, we don't all do that, right? But years ago, I've seen more than one time where other fields are blown out. Mm-hmm. The ones turned to zeros or whatever it is.
Especially with some of the older software.
Old software.
Older DOS, almost DOS type software.
DOS. Yeah, and I've seen that before. Now I think it's pretty solid for the most part. The other thing we're having, I'd be curious to know what your experience is. Where we are in Newburgh, we are getting pretty hefty, dirty surges, power surges.
Really?
Yeah. And, well, for example, the big windstorm was the fire, and you had that huge windstorm. I think we lost probably about $6,000 worth of boards, not just fire boards, but other boards. We lost some fire, and we lost some other control boards.
So your power quality issues are
very poor. Coming in a massive surge, either from the power going down, coming back up, or just
my
dirty.
guess is it's that, because the utilities are putting weather sensors now on the utility lines, and you'll see them. You'll see them on the utility lines, especially the feeders, a lot of the feeder lines, not necessarily the individuals, but the feeders, the larger voltages. You'll see a weather station mounted to the utility pole, and it's a weather, wind speed indicator, and temperature, humidity, stuff like that. They're making a concerted effort to shut down transmission lines when conditions, because of what happened in California. So when conditions get correct, they shut the power down. And so I'm going to take a wild guess that that's probably what's affecting their power quality, is because they're having to do more on and off switchings.
That's possible. It happens it can be just like a guy hits a pole. And
so it could just be random, not necessarily
random.
Associated with weather.
Not always, Not always. I mean, definitely we got some damage. But we've been putting surge arresters, those little Dytex, on all our panels. We're going through.
At OSU, the first time I ever saw one installed on a Silent Night panel was at OSU, and it was in their lab where they did the high voltage work. They have a building out there that handled it. And the guys who ran those fire systems when I was working on them were both journeyman. One was I think one was a plant journeyman, and one was a full journeyman. And I said, "What the heck is that?" And they had a piece of DIN rail, and they had mounted a really high end surge suppressor in there. And he goes, because they do high voltage work in that building, he goes, they blew 2 or 3 of these things out. So
surges.
So it might be.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're going back through.
You're going to have to go back and add them all.
We're going, as we go through them periodically, we'll just keep adding them. But I just was curious. And, of course, Newburgh's far enough out. If you look at what's between, say, Newburgh and Portland, it's all new construction.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's extensive demand on the grid.
I would think so.
Which is probably making it harder.
Something.
And the new equipment, digital is digital. If you blow something out, it now sends digital garbage into the monitoring station. I've had my share of that.
Some of this new equipment is a little daunting with its capabilities and its. Yeah. I was just talking to a guy because the new Swift technology is out for their 60,000 series.
I saw that.
I was an early adopter of the 6820 until it bit us really hard. I had a client that got so upset that they literally, we ripped it out and put a 5820 back in. They just said they bought a 5820 out of California and shipped it to my house.
Oh wow!
And said, put this in, because the full thing. So we already taken the can out, put the 68, and then you could get the board only 58, but you couldn't get a new 58. So he bought a 5820 from somebody new in California.
Really? That's interesting.
Sent it to my house, and I had my installer go and put it in and rip out the 6820. And when I went back to them and said, I don't understand what's going on, what it turned out to be from their perspective was they had to speed the communications up on the SLC to the point that the UARTs are making bad guesses. They're erring in the side of we're an alarm versus not. Yeah. So if you had used shielded wiring, which how many buildings, but you don't now, but we used to do nothing but shielded. So if you walk up and slap a 6820 on the wall in a place that has shielded wiring, you just opened up the first Pandora's box. So it changes it adds either capacitance and
I can see that.
It almost reflects more noise back at the modems. These are all modems, essentially.
Sure.
And it causes false alarms. And so what they wound up giving me was a notifier NCM1 module for one problem, and we put it on and it helped. They basically, you had to have a UL listed device to go on the SLC to suppress some of the noise spikes that was coming back.
Oh my goodness!
So and each company has these protocols that they've come up with that are unique. You know, Simplex has theirs, EST has theirs, Silent Night has theirs, and now with the newest protocols,
Swift.
Yeah, that's for the wireless, but for the regular SLC that they're using, it's just fast. The guy goes, we had to, in order for the new code, you have to move data quicker. And when you move data quicker, if things aren't perfect.
Oh, yeah. Drop out a bit or whatever. So old code, I haven't kept up this last year. They were moving at 300 baud, the fire stuff. Even if you were going into a communicator that was on the internet, initially the information out of the panel was very slow. So that speeded up in the 68, because we have a couple 6820s.
It speeded up between the smoke detectors, the addressable devices, and the motherboard.
Okay, so it's on the loop. The speed on the loop.
The speed on the loop is faster. It had to be, so that the system could react. And there were some protocols, I think, that were more prone to problems than others. And some protocols that didn't work out. That didn't work. There was an Eclipse protocol that I was head over heels in when this Eclipse protocol came out, and Fike was the only system I know that was using it. And it was System Sensors Protocol, which is a Honeywell product now. And it was peer-to-peer networking. So if you put a smoke detector in this room and you had a door magnet on that, you could command that smoke detector to command that door magnet to change state.
Wow.
And the program was resonant in the head and in the door magnet. And so the fire alarm was another peripheral. And the FSCU was a peripheral on the line.
It wasn't the main.
It didn't know. I thought, this can't get any better, because it was so fast.
Distributed,
So fast.
Wow.
And so they put him in a lot of IT rooms.
Okay.
Until I had one go sideways where the head got wet, lost its mind, didn't know what it was doing, and the installer didn't leave a copy of the program. You could put the program in the panel. It knew what it was doing. I mean, once you enroll everything. Then you could put the program in the panel as a place to store it, or you could put it on a thumb drive or both.
Sure, yeah.
It wasn't in the panel.
Oh, no.
It wasn't on a thumb drive because people don't like to pay attention. And so I had to rebuild it from scratch just by looking at all of the other, like devices and mirror that program, And then it was not fun. I got through it, but
I feel your pain. We had a very large building done. The guy did a great job. We wired it exactly how we wanted. We did the design. We would always do the design, run it through the city or the county, and then give it to the contractor. But he never gave us any as-built. Yeah. And there's probably 50 modules in there that control various things. It's got a big evacuation system and all these other things. We had to go back and rebuild a lot of it just for basic information. And there's still modules in that building I can't find.
And that's
crazy.
And that's why the documentation piece is absolutely critical. I've been on site. I followed Convergent behind on an install for a Daimler building that when I pulled out the drawings, the ASBIS that those guys put, matter of fact, we copied them. And I use them in my classroom. I'm like, this is how as-built should look.
Yeah, okay? You get some guys that are super meticulous.
They're unbelievable.
Yeah, color pencils and yeah. We had a guy that worked for us, and he went through we did some apprenticeship programs. We did some limited energy. We did a journeyman. Couple journeymen. We did LME. We were much bigger at the time, much more staff. But this guy was, like you say, everything. Whether he was just running regular line voltage or if he was running this fire system, we had him run a lot of the wiring. Beautiful drawings. Well, that's really great, but probably not going to happen very often.
Not very often.
And I know where even in George Fox, which is not a for-profit company, but there was always so much pressure to go on to the next job. That for several years, we did not do the documentation we should have. And now we're at a point of going, no, we've got to stop. I just made some changes today, and I was like, okay, well, whatever, we'll figure it out. And then I thought, no, I'm going to write this down for the next poor soul that's got to look at this program.
So that is the key to the whole thing, is that every time you touch it, it has to be better than the way you found it.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the philosophy is that every time if I go and document something, because I've worked at OHSU twice, I can go back on my own work. One of the first things I had to deal with was a leak in one of the buildings. I got this module wet, and I get there. I already knew where the module was. I'd been through this before, so I'm up on my ladder. I got it all apart, and I can see where the water's coming out of the wall because it's raining like crazy. And I open up the thing, and there's my business card from 15 years with the this thing gets wet. So until we can move it to the other wall. Right, so I obviously I knew this thing was an issue.
Yeah, way back.
I looked at my apprentice and said, "Let's go get all the stuff and move it to the other wall." This idiot here said we should have done that 15 years ago. Let's just go ahead and do it now, and we did.
That's cool.
But the constraints at the time when I first got there, the system was halfway in between one addressable system and another.
Oh, yeah.
And we found it completely in complete disrepair. It had 437 troubles on it, and that was a light number of. That was what we could say the number was. That was not how many issues that were really there.
Wow.
And we started working on getting that down, and we had a guy named Chris Crombie who had come from Simplex as well, and he was brilliant, and he was the guy who really spearheaded how we were going to put this together because he knew how to put it together, and we were just lackeys, you know?
Yeah.
And we pieced this whole thing together. It took us a couple of years to get to 0 troubles. And when the system went green, and we all took a picture of it,
wow.
then I said, okay,
donuts.
Now let's go back and now repair all of the known functions that we know need to be done. And so he built a whole database, and we would triage with that database how to affect what he, because I had a hard time figuring out whether I should fix this. Should I move this box because of the next time it rains heavy, it might get wet and affect a set of doors, or should we get new bells and whistles put in this particular building because our we have no signals anywhere we should. Well, if you're looking at the two things, you should probably go put the new bells in. Okay,
probably.
You should not probably go. But the more fun thing is to go put the door back together the right way. And so, because my partner and I at the time were like, what sounds fun to do today?
Yeah, I've had that too. It's like, I really don't want to do that. It's
boring. I don't really
it's
want
really
to
boring.
Please don't make me do this. So he built an access database to triage automatically.
Oh my goodness.
Based upon the descriptors we put in. And he had criteria that it went through. The guy was brilliant.
Yeah.
So that's what told us, this is on top of the maintenance system, but this is on top of whatever maintenance system we had at the time, which was a thing by Service Master. So it would tell us what to do. We would get the Service Master number. We would go do it. That system worked so well that we were able to completely knock down the biggest life safety issues, and then the Class A's and the Class B's and the Class C's and the Class D's, and got all the way down. And that system had worked for years. So the guy got so good at working on stuff like that, he left doing fire life safety and went into database management for IT. And that's what he does now.
Sounds like that's where he belonged.
That's where he belonged.
I mean, you'd have to have a really firm grip on access or database.
Which he
basically.
taught himself. And
amazing.
He's kind of an autodidact in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now I'm back again, and I'm looking at it, and because the troubles are not nearly as significant.
Yeah.
Now it's just a matter of let me do my own hierarchy here, and I can see on the horizon us having to have some sort of hierarchical system that my partner and I are going to have to put together to really figure it out, because otherwise I'll just go, today I'm going to decide I got to do this, even though that may not be the most important thing. So, still, even in my late 50s, I'm thinking, sometimes I just want to go fix something, make it look pretty.
Yeah, I know, make it look better. Yes, exactly. I know what you're saying.
Dewire this thing.
Yeah, maybe one of the students will smash something and go fix it. We usually have something like that.
Something.
Yeah, but it is really amazing though, because this is the danger of just farming stuff out, is that you really don't know. I mean, the guy is licensed and whatever, and maybe he's really good at something he specializes in. Maybe he's not so good in troubleshooting. And he comes out, and then the problem comes back, and then Sally comes out, and then Billy, and then Henry, and now you've racked up a huge amount of money for the customer, but no one's overseeing what they already eliminated, or, like you say, hierarchy, starting at the top down, because you can diddle around on the bottom forever and never really solve
That's a good way of putting it.
The whole issue. I look at it kind of as a pyramid or a tree. You're getting, and that can be tricky because you have digital code, you have lights and all kinds of things, and you try to decide what's really going on here. It's like if you get a runaway or a bunch of digital trash, and I've had that from phone line issues or surges. Yep. But that's not really, that's what it's saying, but that's not really what's going on.
So the root cause analysis they haven't figured out.
No.
They've taken care of other issues.
Right.
And that's where when I teach technicians, it's like, look, there's a cycle to this. And the cycle is when I start to troubleshoot something, especially when I don't know what the hell it's got. If it's the same thing I've seen a dozen times, I got a dirty smoke detector. Sure. I know how to handle that. Yeah. But if it's a new issue and we have to go through, there's a whole way of following a logical step. Right. And part of that is, I call it getting zen. There's a part where I go, what the hell is this causing this? I've got to get zen with it. I've got to stop, close my mind, and figure out what the logical answer is here, and then apply that and see if that's the issue or not. And if it's not, then I've got to figure it out. But if I do it in a vacuum and the next technician behind me doesn't have a clue as to what I did, then I'm wasting his time or her time, and I'm wasting all that effort. As a matter of fact, when I came back one time, we had a ground fault that popped up, and I went to troubleshoot it, and I remembered that this ground fault had plagued us in the past. So the ground fault had been there for 20 years intermittently. And it was there solid, so I tore into it. It took me 5.5 hours to solve it. So in the time that I was there before, we had taken cracks at this. And you could see notes where we had left each other going, we're grounded on, of 98.
Segment or whatever.
Yeah, because we write on tape, and we would write, red tape or white tape, and write it down with a ballpoint pen. I like that. And I went back and I finally found this thing. I finally found it. And the kid who was working with me was a prospective apprentice. After 5.5 hours of chasing around by me, he just looked at me. His eyes are the size of dinner plates. He goes, "You got to be kidding me." And I'm like, "No, this is what we do. Like we just continue to dog this until we get it." Oh, yeah. And he was just like, "I don't know that this is for me."
Exactly. It's a mindset.
Yeah.
I look at it, it's almost like, I like to hike with my family, and some of these have been, the last one we were out in the Wallowas, and we got up to about
what a beautiful place.
It was beautiful. It was end of the season. It was still really nice, but, we knew a storm was coming in. So we were going to go up to this mine. We got up to about 6,000 feet, and, it was my kids and one of their husbands and all that, and the new, son-in-law is kind of asking me, like, how do you do this? Because it was getting pretty grueling. And I'm not in that great a shape, but I said, it's a mental thing for me until my body just gives out. I will not turn back if I can get to the top. And I've always been that way. Yeah. But I'll pay for it. I won't be able to walk for a week. I can't work, But he didn't get it. It's like, why would you push so hard? It's starting to rain. It's starting to get cold. Okay. We make a decision to turn around because it's no longer safe. That's a rational decision. That's a rational call. But if it was a nice day and everybody was still functional, no. I mean, obviously, if the building's on fire, you have to leave. But if
the goal is there.
The goal. Yeah, and it is a mental state.
So that being driven, I think, is a key in technicians who I
agree.
I think without that drive, you could very well have to either get yourself motivated to do it or maybe do something different in the discipline.
Yeah, I agree. It's because it can get very old to the point where you want to go home. You don't have a personal investment in this building. And it is very difficult because you have to have that innate personal integrity that this is what I do. I'm not going to let this beat me, whatever it is. And there's sometimes you have to call it quits, but as best as you can. And I agree, like finding a ground fault or an intermittent, it's the worst. It's absolutely the worst.
Worst.
I was always taught with the ground fault, you just rip everything off the board. everything comes off.
That's what I do.
Yeah, and if the board is
the new systems actually will tell you where they're at now. But the older systems,
like silent, right?
I unload the board. No, with an SK like a 5207, you got to unload the board.
Yeah, whole thing.
Unload the whole thing.
Yep.
And then
put them back one at a time.
Exactly.
And see, and then you got to go cut it in half, and you got to start looking for the,
Bingo.
Which can take dragging around a ladder. Oh shoot, it's too big of a ceiling. I have to go get a bigger ladder, and yeah, it's at a point where you really don't maybe want to do it.
We added in the time that I was gone and I came back, you can't lift ceiling tiles without having a HEPA cart underneath the tiles. So to add a caveat of snap, if I have to lift this tile and there's aspergillus, which is this, any fungus that lives in a construction dust is deadly to an immune compromised person.
Oh, yeah.
So in order for me to lift this tile, I'd have to bring in a cart, put it up against the tile, turn it on, which is going to negatively pull air into the cart, into a HEPA filter. Really? Then I can lift the tile. And there's still other protocols there that you have to follow.
Interesting.
Then I can go up to the ceiling. So if I'm troubleshooting a ground, so I've got ground faults, I'm troubleshooting, I've gotten to a certain point, and I have to come back at another time to finish this. Yeah. It's just so, and I had a kid die from who had cancer from aspergillus. So that's a personal thing in my own world, knowing that if I've got she had a bone marrow transplant, and so the bone marrow transplant everything took fine, but the aspergillus was already present. So
it took over.
It takes over, and now it's a race. Are you going to get an immune system to kill the aspergillus, or you're not? And for those who don't realize, fungus is something you deal with when your immune system's good all the time. But when your immune system's trash, it wins. It's such a simple, evil little
horrible.
Yeah,
little fingers.
It just tore her to shreds, and we're like, that's the way that game's played. Wow. So now, as I'm back in there working in those bone marrow transplant areas, or working around patients that are, I'm like, I absolutely. Go get the cart, pull it over here, set it up.
Do your part.
Do your part, because it's legit. I mean, and that's of course it's a hospital versus a school. But
well, with us, we bought the old Newburgh Hospital. This was
I didn't know that.
10 years ago, 15 years ago, and massive remodel into classroom space and all kinds of things. But I remember popping those tiles. They did not change out the air conditioning, and they didn't clean it. And so everybody was really creeped out and thinking, there's a little Legionnaire's disease. Here's a
little Legionella waiting for you.
I'm popping it open like this. But it's even in the last 10 years, it's changed considerably. Yeah. And now we have a full-time safety coordinator who's helped a lot because, frankly, you don't always have the time to figure this out.
No, and they do.
They do. That's their job. Yeah. And so we did. One thing that was good, though, is we did institute a no hot work policy. So any of the contractors that come, we kill it. And it's not like a hospital. Well, even in a hospital, if it's not life safety, you shut the power down, although most of them, probably don't. I think that's one thing. One of the reasons I went into limited energy was after the experience in the nuclear industry.
Stay away from that.
Yeah. I don't know. I just figured sooner or later your number comes up, right?
Yes.
And
with limited energy, it doesn't come up as often.
Not as often. You can still reach up there. I have a habit of grabbing the panel. I'm like, no, don't do that. It's bad. But it's been good. Otherwise,
I have to tell you, Sue, I really enjoy talking to you. This is we could probably continue for another hour.
Probably.
I'm sure our listeners will come hunt us down. But what a fantastic story you've got.
It's been really good. It's been very hard, but I think it's really helped me with my kids too. I've shared a lot of examples just from daily things.
They didn't follow your footprints or not? They're not limited energy or high voltage electricians. They all went into.
Well, the oldest one, they all worked with us as work steady. But the oldest one used to work at Concordia before they folded. She was an athletic trainer. And she did a lot of hands-on stuff. And then my older son worked there. He welded and did a lot of things. Now he regrets he didn't become an electrician, but he works on huge excavators. He got a business degree, and he wants to do his own company. And then
he's the one that lives in Antelope.
Well, no,
that's a different.
He lives in Cove Orchard, actually, not too far from us. He bought a house.
Oh, no kidding.
But they send him to Gresham every day, and so he's driving. A lot of these jobs are, out of the edges of town.
So they don't have the flying car yet. I noticed. I remember all that stuff they promised us.
Oh, I know.
Promised us.
Where is it?
Jetpacks.
Yeah, jetpack.
None of that crap.
Well, I hear that Europe's going to rebuild all their coal plants, so they'll be able to have some electricity anyway.
Great.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've gotten to work with them, but none of them had the passion for electrical the way I did, and my husband, obviously, because we've done it for so many years. It's kind of like who we are, especially when you're married to the person you work with. But a lot of it's been the passion of how are we going to do this project? How are we going to make this happen?
So you have a really good relationship with your husband that you were able to work together. You didn't kill each other.
I wouldn't say that's now. You can only get away with so much. All this microaggression training, as far as I'm concerned, is rather irrelevant. You need to know what real aggression is, but that's a different story.
How dare you duck when I throw things at you?
Right, exactly. No chairs, no bottles, no tools,
I worked with my wife too, and it was pretty good. I mean, she had a work ethic that I was blown away by, which made it very attractive to me. And so
That's awesome.
She's retired. She's since retired now. She just kind of handles animals, and she does her own thing. And I don't mind working,
solo,
a bunch of different jobs to kind of help support that, because I'm sort of a workaholic to that degree. It's like I like to keep busy.
Well, I do too.
And I don't like sitting around the house wondering what I'm going to do today. Is just that's not. I can't live that way.
No.
And I was thinking, well, at some point I'm going to retire, but I have to have something to do when I retire, because I've seen too many people sit around and just die.
They die. They're gone within 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Especially people that were really attached to what they did, that had that passion. I always look at, I think that what we see as retirement was a very, very narrow window post-World War II, where, okay, you're useless now, go sit on the beach in Florida, which I think was a horrible waste of human capital.
I think you're right.
I think it was a very small slice, really, because before World War II, well, Grandpa still farmed, Grandma still cooked and took care of the kids and helped and did the best she could. People were still functional in their roles. And the whole idea of taking all that knowledge that you've accumulated and parking it.
Right.
I
especially at like 55 or 60, because remember when people were, my grandfather and grandmother retired in their 50s.
Oh, yeah, that was the thing.
55 to 60, they were done.
Particularly if you had a government pension, or you could just, if you were financially able to. And I never really understood that.
I thought it was the goal, and when I hit 55, I went, well...
You ready?
I'm not. No.
You're not.
No, not at all. And now I'm looking at the future going... the wife wants me to retire. I get that.
Sure.
And so, because we would go and travel and do things like that. But I also know that I'm mentally and physically not ready yet. Like physically doing this job keeps my body...
Oh, it keeps you young.
It keeps me young.
Oh, it does. Yeah. I mean, I look at other people that are 20 years younger than me, and a lot of them are not in very good shape. And I'm like, no, you go up and down the ladder, you're going to die, pal. Just, it.
You
and
just
I hate
stay
to
down
say
there.
that.
Let me take I'm going to take all this heavy lifting for you.
Yeah, but it is true. You think originally people were always active. You farmed or you did something, but you probably walked to town, and now people are so sedentary. That's another problem too. And like I was talking to that one contractor friend, he was like, yeah, the guy only made it till lunchtime. And the guy was 19 or 20 or something. Well, why is it you only made it till lunchtime? What's wrong with you? Are you in such bad shape because you weigh too much, or you sit around playing video games and you never get any exercise? Is that what we're facing? Because let's face it, if you're the apprentice, you're going in the attic.
Yeah.
Or the basement or whatever.
You're working.
You're going to be the one that fits in the hole.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the people that are even coming into the program, I don't think they realize it's work.
It's physical.
It's very physical.
It's a very physical thing.
And instead of saying, okay, well, I'll be sore for a week, I can live with that. I think there's just not the will to continue, which I think is really bad.
I thought I was alone in that thought, but I'm clearly not.
You are not. And I hear that from other contractors that are bringing apprentices. And I remember one of them, we had hired the guy, and he had a new apprentice, and he's like, yeah, no problem. We'll get this job done on off hours, so we're going to come in at 3 a.m. I thought the kid was going to collapse, but that was his life for the next week.
Wow.
But he did what he had to do, and he's turned out. But I find a lot of, especially with college students, we used to have massive number of work-study students that would do, clean gutters, menial jobs, haul materials, material handlers.
Just something to pay the bills and keep your mind going.
And it was part of their financial aid packages. Very rare now to get any of them that will work in those harder jobs.
It's like when we were, I hate to harken back to when we were kids, but you remember when you were kids, did you ever come inside the house?
Very little. Well, I did in California because I was going to die from a heat stroke, but I mean.
Well, we played outside.
But we were out all the time.
I can't get my grandkid outside. When she does go outside, when the little friends come down the street and they play, they have a blast. You can hear them. Like when kids are having fun and they get loud and
all that noise.
Like, what the hell's going on in the backyard?
Oh, I know.
But you don't have that
it's
now.
Quiet.
You go outside in the neighborhoods, there's nobody running around. And when I was a boy, in Oceanside especially, that is where we were.
Yeah,
I came in to watch Hill Street Blues. That was it. That was it. Mom made popcorn. We all ate. Watched Hill Street Blues.
That's cool.
And that was then.
But it was very much outdoor. You were riding your bicycle, or you were roller skating, or climbing, or building something. Or that's the other thing I think too that is hard is that even for girls, it didn't do as much mechanical. Typically, they didn't go into woodworking or automotive. But they did go
home
into
ec.
cooking. But still,
home ec.
But you sewed.
Yeah.
Physical.
Yeah, you did something.
And sewing. It's kind of funny. I laugh. Some of my girls are big time into crafts, and crafts give me a nervous breakdown. I can't do it, but I can sew. And the only reason is because it's just like construction. You have a set of plans, and you assemble. It's just like doing any construction project. So it's
so the better you do the seams, the better it looks.
It's better craftsmanship.
The better craftsmanship.
It's no different than putting conduit on the wall, really.
Yeah.
But it's a plan. You assemble your materials.
Yeah,
you assemble it.
I never saw it that way.
Well, I kept thinking about it because they're like, well, you can sew. How come you don't like crafts? Because it's not the same. There's no plan. But nonetheless, either way, girls and boys both had to take something on paper and put it to the physical world. They had to build a fort or fix their bike or sew or cook or do
make
something.
A go-kart or whatever the heck they did.
It doesn't really matter, but it was transferring to the physical. And I think so much of the virtual interaction, you miss that piece. And then they come out and they really want to do the job. Maybe they don't know a lot about tools. That doesn't matter. You can learn that. Because I had to learn tools. I really didn't know much. I knew some. I could work basics on a car when I went in, but not like for example, my husband, who grew up fixing cars and building things. But nonetheless, I still had enough of that hands-on experience just doing stuff, right? And a lot of times that's missing, especially for kids growing up in the city. And I've noticed over the years, like with our work-study students, a lot of the farm kids from Eastern Oregon, girl or boy, were generally more successful they just were comfortable. And if it was hot out or cold out,
didn't matter.
They were okay.
Yeah. They dressed appropriately. Or they undressed appropriately,
Because, some of them have no experience even being outdoors. And, honey, it's 100 degrees out. I think we need to change that,
I never, now that you mention it, it makes a lot of sense.
But that's just an observation. And based on my own experience, coming in, there was things like theoretically, I got it right away. I was just talking to the engineer today, and he's talking about resonant frequencies and the structure of the Kindorf. I'm like, yeah, totally, I've got it. Whereas he can't have that conversation with everyone, but then with tools and things, it took me a while, right? So I think, everybody's got strengths, but I'm beginning to see that lack of interaction in the physical, it's hard. It's harder for the
I'm wondering how, I have a 9-year-old granddaughter, and she spends half, a third or half of her time at our house, and you cannot get her off of the iPad. You cannot. It is like a rare earth magnet. I mean, it's like wham. She can show you what she's built in Roblox, and she talks to her friends, and she has these, she has friends that she talks to. She's still interacting with people, and she's interacting with people who are also interacting with her. Cyber, through cyber world, but not necessarily physical. Not
No.
And their bikes. I've got I ride a bike a lot, and so to me, getting up, riding a bike, getting in the cold, getting ready for it, getting the wind, getting physical, looking at my heart to make sure my heart's
overdo it.
Or that I'm trending, like
where you need to be.
Exactly.
How far
Where
do you push?
am I pushing enough?
Right.
And all that stuff's important to me. But I've always sort of been a physical. I've always had that physical activity because I was a boy, and then I went in the military, and once you're in the military, they kind of pound it into you that you're going to run here, and all these things, and I've gained weight, I've lost weight, I've done all that, but I don't. I'll put it to this way: when I left my last company, I said, "Well, I'm leaving a position as a manager of 62 employees to go not manage anybody, be a technician again, and ride my bike up the hill 2 or 3 times a week, and carry backpacks full of tools all day." And I've been doing this now. I've been back there for over a year.
Wow.
And I carry a backpack. I mean, this I think it's got an anvil collection in it. Because I'll have everything I need
is all there
to go do it is there pretty much. And then I can either walk to the building or I'll drive to it and go up and carry it all up there. But it's to be able to install and carry just what you need to get it right.
Have
because
everything
you've done
there.
it so long.
Right,
You've done it so many times. Yeah, you want to get it right. I don't want to carry 100 foot of conduit when I can only, or
get
flex. I can
20.
Exactly. And so all that work, all that momentum, all that stuff in the last year has mentally made me happier. Like I'm a happier person.
Feel better.
I feel better.
Stronger, more confident.
I feel more confident. I feel like I'm 58, so I feel healthy.
Yeah.
I fit a 32 waist, so I'm all those things I've wanted that I didn't have.
Not as a manager.
Not as and except that you have the prestige, you're making decisions in people's lives.
Yeah.
All those things that you think that's what you're looking for in your life until one day you look up and your better half goes, "I need something different." Like you need to be. There has to be something on a smile on your face at some point.
Right. Where did you go?
What? Yeah.
Where are you? I know you get lost in the job.
You get lost in the job.
And I know over the years with Paul and I, there have been times when one or the other of us has been very, very unhappy or wanted to quit. He quit for a while and came back. I mean, but it's you take you with you. And if it's the fundamental things that aren't making you happy about your own life, it doesn't make any difference where you work. You're still going to take you with you. And you're going to get up in the morning and look at the same old person in the mirror.
The only person you can change
is you.
Oh.
No, it's very, that's encouraging.
I can't believe we're just now meeting. Honestly.
I live in a basement. I didn't even get out of the basement for like the first 15 years. And then when they fired everybody, the manager, the director comes to me and goes, "Well, we got to do this differently, and we're going to have to change the way we buy stuff and manage, and we're going to farm it out. Will you contract out the jobs?" And I'm looking at him like, "Go die." But of course, I didn't say that.
Die!
It's of course, anything you need, I'd be happy to. Of course, I've run other companies. I can do this. 6 months later, I'm getting treatment every week for my neck. They're getting me a new desk that's supposed to be ergonomically helpful.
And you're getting carpal tunnel from
I'm
clicking
going
on the mouse.
blind. I need another pair of glasses.
Yeah.
Oh, but they all call me boss because they think it's funny. And I finally told them today, don't call me boss. I'm nothing more than the management slave. You're just the doer slaves. Yeah. So quit whining, know. But no, because when they first let everybody go, I had to go back out in the field, and I did. It took a while, but I got in really good condition and I felt better. Mm-hmm. But you do pay a price for sitting at that desk.
You do.
You know, and yeah, I get it. I do a bunch of other stuff, but it's mostly service work. It's not anything really heavy duty. You know, I drive my truck up and make 14 trips out because I don't have everything, and
because you got out of the habit of carrying. Yeah. You know exactly what to bring.
They're very generous. They buy very nice equipment for us. It's just I don't do it all the time. Yeah, and it's like, wow, that was really lame. But no, you've got to find what. I think it's so bad, that mentality, and I saw this in some of the older guys we had working there, where they gain a ton of weight. They totally lose track with what's going on. They don't upgrade their skills. They don't care. They're just blobs. They're taking up space. And I don't think anybody's going to survive with that mentality at all, especially not in today's market, in today's world. You know, losing skills and not being able to at least provide for yourself, I think it's really important to have something you can offer. I don't care how old you are. But if you're non-functional, you know, that could be a problem. Yeah, and we had a couple of guys who were literally non-functional for a while, and finally they let them go. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how any company can afford to have a non-producer.
I agree.
You know, and it's just from their point of view, from the employer's point of view, or from your own. What's the point of? My brother-in-law was really interesting. He was a microwave engineer down in Arroyo Grande, and he was 72, and he worked for Raytheon on the really creepy stuff. So, but he loved it. Mm-hmm. He was brilliant, and he was a bicycle rider, big time. Well, one day he went out and got hit by a car. It was over. Mm-hmm. And my sister-in-law was like, you know what? He was doing what he loved to do.
That's exactly right.
And you can't sit at home in your rocking chair. And you know, yes, it was very hard on the family, all that stuff.
It sucks, but it happens.
And he was loving his work. He was loving his bicycle, and that was great. You know. So I think that's a better way to look at it. So the next time I fall off the ladder,
it might be your last, but you went out with a smile.
You know how time stops, right? I was on the way down. I thought, dang, you should have had that bone density test. And then I hit really hard.
That's funny.
And everything worked. I thought, see, you just saved yourself $30. That's my attitude.
Oh, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me. I was so blown away. I had no idea what you guys were about.
Yeah, good.
So this is great.
This is it. Would you come back?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Nice.
We can always talk about something. There's lots of stories.
Sweet.
It's good.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you. It's good to meet you.
Thanks for listening to the Half-Watt Podcast. We always want to hear from you, and we encourage you to email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with questions or even your own stories. Funny, crazy, or praiseworthy, we want to hear it all. You can follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod to stay up to date on our feed. And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And share us with a friend, the best way to help us grow. The Half-Watt Podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios.